Tonight, we are celebrating the best of both TV and film right here in the heart of Los Angeles, where no TV or film has been made for the past 6 years. I'm Nikki Glaser, and just like Wicked, I'm back for a sequel.
There are nights in Hollywood that feel rehearsed, predictable, polished, safe. And then there are nights that feel alive, where the room itself seems to breathe, react, whisper, and occasionally gasp. The 2026 Golden Globes was the second kind. Before a single award was handed out, before the standing ovations and viral kisses, before nostalgia and legacy collided with modern celebrity culture, there was a feeling hanging in the air, that unmistakable sense that something was about to happen. Not one moment, not one headline, but a chain of moments that would ripple across social media, entertainment news, and fan conversations for weeks. Hollywood had shown up not just dressed to impress, but ready to be seen, judged, celebrated, and quietly compared. And it all began the way only the Golden Globes can begin, slightly chaotic, unapologetically self-aware, and deeply unserious about how serious everyone secretly is. The Beverly Hilton Ballroom shimmered the way it always does, but there was a sharper edge this year. Conversations overlapped. Laughter arrived early. Tables leaned closer together, not just for comfort, but curiosity. Who was sitting where? Who arrived with whom? Who avoided eye contact? Who looked relaxed? Who looked like they were performing relaxation? This wasn't just another awards show, it was Hollywood taking attendance. Producers and studio heads scanned the room like chess players. Publicists hovered with calculated smiles. Actors hugged warmly while subtly clocking which cameras were live. And somewhere between champagne flutes and carefully practiced nonchalance, the night quietly announced its theme. And Nikki Glaser walked out. Hosting an awards show is a dangerous job. Hosting the Golden Globes is practically reckless. It's a room filled with people who are praised for vulnerability but allergic to embarrassment. A room that laughs loudly but remembers everything. Nikki Glaser didn't just walk into that challenge, she sprinted. From the very first beat of her opening monologue, it was clear she wasn't here to play defense. She wasn't here to gently tease. She was here to remind Hollywood that comedy still has teeth, and that discomfort, when done right, is part of the spectacle. She didn't warm the room up slowly. She went straight for the pressure points: careers, relationships, image management, the carefully constructed mystery some celebrities mistake for depth. And then came that moment. Leonardo DiCaprio. With surgical timing, Nikki called out what fans have whispered about for years: his famously guarded personal life, flipping it into a punchline that landed not because it was cruel, but because it was accurate. The room laughed. Cameras cut. DiCaprio smiled in that way that suggests he's heard worse. But not usually this publicly. It set the tone instantly. This wasn't going to be a night where celebrities hid behind applause. This was a night where reputation met reality, even if only for a second. Nikki moved fast, darting from one joke to the next, occasionally apologizing mid-sentence, only to immediately double down. When she turned her attention to Liam, joking that the mystery surrounding him had become his entire brand. The laughter wasn't just from the audience, it was from viewers at home who recognized the truth buried in the joke. When Nikki joked about age gaps, relationship optics, and the strange theater of celebrity gratitude speeches, she wasn't mocking from the outside. She was standing inside the ecosystem, reflecting it back like a slightly warped mirror. And Hollywood, for once, didn't look away. Before the first award was announced, clips from the opening monologue were already circulating online. Fans debated which jokes crossed lines and which finally said what needed to be said. Some praised Nikki's fearlessness. Others clutched pearls. All of them watched. As the night progressed, the Globes began doing what they do best, weaving old Hollywood with the new. When Macaulay Culkin stepped onto the stage later in the evening, the reaction wasn't polite applause. It was something warmer, something emotional, the kind of response that doesn't come from hype, but history. Here was a man whose face defined childhood for an entire generation. Now standing comfortably, confidently, amused by the irony of it all. His self-deprecating humor about existing outside the holiday season landed because it wasn't defensive. It was honest. Hollywood loves a comeback story. But what it loves even more is a full circle moment. Someone returning not desperate, not performative, but content. It was one of the first reminders of the night's deeper theme. It was clear this year's Golden Globes wasn't just about who won, it was about who belonged in the room now. New names sat comfortably beside legends. Rising stars laughed easily with industry veterans. The old hierarchy felt flexible, and that flexibility would matter later. Because as the night moved forward, romance, fashion, legacy, rivalry, and validation were all about to collide. Not separately, but together. By the time the Golden Globes had fully found its rhythm, something subtle but undeniable was happening inside the room. Cameras were no longer just scanning the stage. They were circling tables, lingering, returning, waiting. And whether Hollywood wanted to admit it or not, one table had become the emotional axis of the night. Timothee Chalamet and Kylie Jenner weren't trying to dominate the evening. They didn't walk the red carpet together, didn't announce anything, and didn't posture for attention. Yet somehow, without effort, they became unavoidable. This was their third Golden Globes together, and that detail mattered more than it seemed. Hollywood romances usually arrive loud or leave fast. When Timothee and Kylie first appeared together at the 2024 Golden Globes, the internet nearly short-circuited. The pairing felt unexpected, almost algorithmically shocking. An indie darling actor known for introspection and art house credibility, and a global beauty mogul raised under reality TV lights. But fast forward to 2026, and the questions had changed. Now, people weren't asking if it was real. They were watching how it had matured. And that maturity was on full display inside the Golden Globes ballroom. Kylie didn't walk the red carpet with Timothee this year. And that absence sparked just as much conversation as any joint appearance could have. Some saw it as intentional privacy, others read it as strategic restraint. A few tried to spin it into distance. But inside the room, the truth was visible. They didn't need a carpet moment. They had presence. From the moment Timothee took his seat with Kylie by his side, the dynamic felt settled, comfortable, quietly confident. This wasn't a couple performing romance. This was a couple living it under bright lights. They leaned in when they spoke, laughed easily, touched without hesitation, but without spectacle. Hollywood noticed. The room shifted when Timothee's category came up. Best Actor in a Musical or Comedy for Marty Supreme. There's a particular tension that descends in moments like this. Nominees straighten, tables go quiet, partners instinctively brace themselves for either joy or polite disappointment. When Timothee's name was announced, the reaction wasn't surprise. It was recognition. He stood, hugged director Josh Safdie, then turned instinctively to Kylie. The kiss wasn't theatrical. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't staged. It was natural. And that's why it mattered. As applause washed over the room, cameras caught Kylie clapping with genuine pride, smiling not like someone sharing a spotlight, but like someone sharing a life. And when Timothee reached the stage, he didn't forget her. For my partner. Timothee spoke about gratitude the way he always has. Then he paused. For my parents, he said, and for my partner, I love you. The room responded immediately, but with warmth. In a town obsessed with ambiguity, Timothee chose definition. And Kylie, watching from her seat, mouthed, I'm so happy, as he walked off stage, hugging his co-star Odessa Asian, still glowing. That distinction mattered. This wasn't PDA for headlines. This was intimacy surviving in public. The image of Timothee and Kylie, settled, proud, unbothered, lingered long after applause faded. By the time Macaulay Culkin's name appeared on the teleprompter, the Golden Globes ballroom had already lived several emotional lives. This wasn't hype. This was recognition. When Macaulay Culkin walked onto the Golden Globes stage, the applause didn't arrive late or politely. It surged immediately. Instinctive, loud, and unfiltered. Not the kind of clapping people give because they feel obligated, but the kind that comes from memory rising all at once. For a split second, the room wasn't full of executives, stars, and strategists. It was full of children who grew up. Culkin paused, just briefly, as the cheers washed over him. You could see it register on his face. Not disbelief exactly, but something closer to being caught off guard by affection. I haven't been here since I was a kid, he said, half laughing, half processing the moment. And thanks for welcoming me back. That's really nice of you guys. That sentence mattered, because Hollywood doesn't always welcome people back, especially not those who burned bright too early, stepped away, or refused to play the game on the industry's terms. Macaulay Culkin didn't disappear because he failed. He stepped back because he survived. There are few faces more universally recognizable than Culkin's. His childhood was broadcast into living rooms across the world, frozen in time every December, replayed endlessly, turning a real person into a seasonal tradition. Home Alone didn't just make him famous, it made him permanent. But permanence comes with a cost. Hollywood has a complicated relationship with child stars, celebrating them early, consuming them quickly, then quietly moving on when adulthood arrives. Many don't make it back, some don't want to, some aren't allowed. That's why this moment landed differently. Culkin wasn't here to reclaim relevance. He wasn't pitching a comeback. He wasn't apologizing for leaving. He was simply present. As he continued, Culkin did what he's always done best: disarm the room. "I know it's weird to see me outside the holiday season," he joked, "but shockingly, I do exist all year round." Many actors spend their entire careers trying to outrun a defining role. Culkin leaned into his, not as a crutch, but as a shared cultural memory. And in doing so, he reminded Hollywood of something it often forgets. Longevity isn't about staying visible, it's about staying whole. And for a night obsessed with performance, that honesty felt radical. As Culkin exited the stage, applause followed him longer than expected. Not because the show demanded it, but because the room wanted it. And as the ceremony moved on, something subtle had changed. The Golden Globes wasn't just celebrating achievement anymore, it was honoring endurance. And that set the stage for what came next: a battlefield dressed in silk and diamonds, where power wasn't spoken, but worn. By the time the Golden Globe ceremony moved deeper into the evening, something else had fully taken hold of the conversation. Something that didn't require a microphone, a speech, or even applause. Fashion, but not fashion as decoration, fashion as language. This year, the red carpet, and later the ballroom itself, became a battleground of intent. Every silhouette, every archival pull, every calculated risk carried meaning. The Golden Globes 2026 wasn't about who wore the most expensive gown, it was about who understood the moment. Because nostalgia wasn't just trending, it was competing. Industry insiders had been whispering about it for weeks. Vintage was going to dominate, not as homage, but as strategy. In a world oversaturated with newness, the past suddenly carried weight, credibility, history, gravitas. As one fashion director quietly observed before the ceremony, the question wasn't who looks good anymore, it was who chose wisely. Vintage dressing has become Hollywood's way of saying, I belong to something bigger than this moment. And at the Golden Globes 2026, everyone was listening. Jennifer Lawrence arrived with the confidence of someone who knows exactly who she is and what the room expects from her. Her Dior gown felt deceptively playful, soft draping, an almost toga-like elegance, and a color palette that balanced warmth with restraint. It was modern, yes, but not loud, a reminder that Jennifer doesn't need to shock to command attention. What made her look resonate wasn't the fabric, it was the ease. This wasn't a comeback statement. This wasn't reinvention, it was continuity. Jennifer Lawrence didn't dress to win the algorithm. She dressed to remind Hollywood that charisma still outranks chaos. If there was one name whispered repeatedly among stylists, editors, and designers that night, it was Teyana Taylor. She didn't just wear fashion, she inhabited it. Teyana's style journey throughout the season had already hinted at something special: metallics, volume, structure, sheer textures, all worn with an instinctive confidence that can't be taught. But at the Golden Globes, she elevated it. Her choice echoed a holy grail of vintage fashion. Late 90s John Galliano for Dior. Metallic, fluid, bold without being aggressive. This wasn't nostalgia cosplay. This was understanding lineage. Galliano's era at Dior represents a time when fashion told stories. Dramatic, emotional, unapologetic stories. Teyana didn't just reference that era, she translated it for now. Because in a room full of careful choices, hers felt fearless. Vintage dressing used to be about sustainability or style credibility. Now, it's about access. Not everyone can pull from archives, and not everyone can carry them. That's why the red carpet felt less like a runway and more like a curated exhibition. And nowhere was that clearer than in the quieter, sharper choices. Tessa Thompson's presence on the carpet didn't scream. It didn't need to. Her look, rumored to be inspired by late Giorgio Armani's final collections, was restrained, structured, and unapologetically chic. All black, clean lines, old-school Armani discipline. In a night dominated by spectacle, Tessa's look whispered, and whispers in rooms like this carry power. As the face of Armani beauty, her choice felt deliberate, a nod to legacy, respect, and continuity. It wasn't about stealing attention, it was about anchoring it. She didn't dress for cameras, she dressed for history. Every award season introduces a new fashion fixation. Someone's stylist circle, designer's court, editor's debate. This year, it was Chase Infinity. Freshly signed with Louis Vuitton, Chase arrived carrying the quiet intensity of someone stepping into a larger narrative. Her previous appearance in a Schiaparelli gown had already turned heads, and whispers circulated all night about her future. Red gloves, cinematic silhouettes, old Hollywood drama filtered through modern edge. This wasn't accidental. This was a debut moment disguised as a continuation. Hollywood fashion doesn't crown stars loudly. It tests them, watches how they carry pressure, measures how they move through rooms like this. One of the most fascinating tensions of the night wasn't between celebrities, it was between platforms. The algorithm loves shock. The room loves intention. This year, many stars chose restraint over reach, craft over clicks. It was a subtle rebellion. Throughout the evening, fashion continued to speak. Not loudly, but persistently. When Teyana Taylor later took the stage to accept her award, the emotional weight of her speech was amplified by the visual memory of her presence. When she turned to show the back of her custom Schiaparelli dress, it wasn't vanity. It was ownership. Hollywood red carpets have become increasingly predictable. Safe gowns, tested silhouettes, focus-grouped glamour. The Golden Globes 2026 disrupted that. Not with chaos, with confidence, people dressed with purpose, with memory, with awareness of where they stood in the cultural timeline. Vintage wasn't a trend, it was a declaration. Behind the smiles and compliments, there was competition. Who pulled the rarest piece? Who carried it best? Who would be remembered 6 months from now? Fashion weeks would dissect these looks endlessly, but the verdict had already been delivered inside the room. The winners weren't those who tried hardest, they were those who belonged. As the night edged closer to its final chapters, fashion had already done its job. It had framed the room, established the hierarchy, reminded Hollywood of its roots and its future. And now, with emotions high and nostalgia fully activated, the stage was set for the legends to step back into focus. Not as relics, but as anchors. Because when legacy walks into a room like this, fashion bows. By the final stretch of the Golden Globes 2026, something unmistakable had settled over the ballroom. This is the moment every award show either collapses under its own weight or finds its meaning. And the Golden Globes, against all expectations, chose meaning. When Julia Roberts stepped onto the stage, the reaction was immediate and unstoppable. People didn't wait for cues. They didn't glance around to see if they should stand. They stood. The applause rose like a wave, sweeping across the room with the kind of collective agreement that can't be manufactured. It wasn't polite. It wasn't nostalgic in a shallow way. It was reverent. Julia looked genuinely surprised at first, eyes widening, hands lifting instinctively as if to say, "Really? Me?" And then, just as naturally, she leaned into it. "Wow," she laughed. "I'm going to be impossible for at least a week." In award shows, standing ovations are often handed out generously, but this one felt different. Julia didn't need to prove relevance. Her presence is relevance, and the room. And filled with people who measure careers in decades and box office numbers, understood that instinctively. She joked about her friends never hearing the end of it. She played it light, but the message underneath was heavy. Moments later, George Clooney took the stage and immediately flipped the tone. "Everybody stood up for Julia," he said dryly. "They didn't stand up for me." The room erupted. This is Clooney's magic. Where Julia carries warmth and grace, George carries timing and self-awareness. He knows exactly how to puncture reverence without disrespecting it. Standing beside Don Cheadle, the trio briefly transformed the Golden Globes into something else entirely. An Ocean's reunion without the set, without the script, without the stakes. Just chemistry. When Don joked about Clooney's age, pointing out how young Timothée Chalamet was the last time George won, the laughter wasn't cruel. It was affectionate. This wasn't Hollywood eating its elders. This was Hollywood laughing with them. There's a reason audience still light up at the mention of oceans. Those films represented a version of Hollywood that was confident without arrogance, stylish without desperation, playful without trying too hard. Seeing Julia, George, and Don together again reminded the room of that era and why it's still referenced. When Julia teased that Ocean's 14 is in the works, the reaction wasn't shock. It was anticipation, because legacy franchises only work when the people behind them still belong together. And on that stage, they did. As the ceremony pushed toward its final awards, the narrative became clear. This wasn't a night of surprises. It was a night of confirmations. One battle after another emerged as the undeniable heavyweight of the evening, sweeping major categories including Best Picture, Musical or Comedy, Best Director, and Best Screenplay. Paul Thomas Anderson's win for Best Director felt inevitable, not because the competition was weak, but because the film represented confidence, craft, and clarity of vision. Hollywood respects risk, but it rewards control. And this film had both. When Teyana Taylor accepted Best Supporting Actress, the room shifted again, this time into something raw. She spoke directly, not theatrically, not carefully. "My babies are upstairs watching," she said, calling them out, grounding the moment instantly in reality. Then came the line that silenced the room. "Our softness is not a liability. Our depth is not too much. Our light does not need permission to shine." This wasn't an award speech, this was a declaration, and the room listened. Timothée Chalamet's win, already emotionally anchored earlier in the night, now felt like part of a larger arc. Wagner Moura's Best Actor win for The Secret Agent reinforced the night's global tone, while the film's win for Best Non-English Language Motion Picture signaled Hollywood's continued shift outward. Rose Byrne finally receiving her flowers at 46 wasn't framed as overdue, it was framed as deserved. Her reaction, stunned, honest, reminded everyone that careers aren't races. Stellan Skarsgård's speech, admitting he thought he was too old, cut through the polish with humility. And that humility landed because it was real. On the television side, adolescence dominated, not through flash, but through depth. 4 wins, including Best Limited Series, confirmed what audiences already knew. Storytelling still wins when it trusts its audience. Owen Cooper's rise, Stephen Graham's authority, the ensemble's cohesion. This wasn't hype, it was craft. The pit and the studio continued that trend, with Seth Rogen's speech delivering one of the night's most honest laughs, admitting he never thought he'd hold a real award unless he created a fake one for himself. That self-awareness summed up the night perfectly. And then, just when things risked becoming too self-serious, Snoop Dogg stepped in. "I need y'all to loosen up," he told the crowd. "This is the double G's." The room responded instantly. Snoop didn't just present an award, he reset the energy. He reminded Hollywood that joy still belongs in these spaces.